سارة، صار عندي حادث سيارة واتصلت بالمحامي كاجي.
قصدين أنتي المحامي كاج؟
ها، يعني هذا المكتب اللي قالوا عليه أكبر مكتب محاماة عربي كلداني بأمريكا، كاجي؟
لا أنا محامي بالكاجي لا. أنا أعرف لورنس، هو قال لي كاجي لا.
أنا أعرف العائلة زين، يقولوها قاجي.
بعد أي حادث سيارة اتصلوا بيا، أنا محامي لورنس قاجي. 248-702-6641 248-702-6641.
أعزائي المستمعين، أهلا وسهلا بكم مرة أخرى وبرنامج جديد للمحامي لورنس قاجي. وإن شاء الله اليوم أيضا يكون برنامجنا ممتع، وراح تكون خطوطنا مفتوحة لاستقبال مكالماتكم. أي سؤال يخص الموضوع اللي دا يتكلمون به أو أي قضية أخرى يعني تتعلق بالمحاماة. Welcome, Mr. قاجي.
Thank you, Sahar. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. What about you? How's you're okay?
Yes.
That's great.
Good.
Welcome, Mr.
Thanks for
John.
having us.
Well, thank you for welcoming us. Thank you for having us back. It's always wonderful to be here.
أهلا وسهلا وشكرا جزيلا أختنا العزيزة ومرحبا بك.
يا أهلا وسهلا بالجميع.
طبعا مستمعينا، مثل ما قلت قبل لحظات، راح عندنا الأسبوع الماضي كنا نتكلم عن القصص اللي تحصل في المكتب، في مكتب المحامي لورنس قاجي، وأيضا قصص أخرى تخص القضايا الانجري، قضايا السقوط، قضايا أخرى كثيرة اللي يتكلمون بها دائما المحامي لورنس والمحامي جان. اليوم راح نكمل نفس القصص، نفس الموضوع، لكن أي واحد عنده قصة، عنده شغلة، عنده سؤال، يقدر يخابرنا على 586-825-2015. وأحب أذكر دائما رقم تليفون مكتب المحامي لورنس قاجي هو 248-702-6641.
Welcome, مرحبا للجميع. Today we are going to finish our stories from last week, and we will, anybody has any questions or any stories they want to share with us, they can call us on the radio or call to the office if they need to. And
we had a great caller last week, had some questions about motor vehicle accidents, and we love that. We encourage everybody to call the radio or our office. Our office number is 248-702-6641. And I think the radio, Sahir, is 586-825-2015, right?
No,
right.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah, so we usually do more informational topics, giving the listeners some sort of base on what the no-fault law is and how car accidents work. But
we've done that a few times.
What we want to do this week and what we did the last time around was we're just kind of talking about some stories about what happened in certain cases, and some of them are heartwarming. Some of them we just ended up doing a good job and getting a ton of money for our clients. So,
yeah, I think the theory is interesting, and getting the background of the law. And I would encourage the listeners to take a look at some of our older shows with some of the law in there. But today, we're gonna talk about some stories about what actually happened applying the law. So
بالوقت الماضي يعني
السنة
بالقديمة دائما كنا يعني نحكي على القانون وشنو القانون وشلون لازم البوليسي مالتك وش لازم تسوي من يصير عندك حادث كله. هسه من ذاك الأسبوع بدينا نحكي قصص صارت حقيقية، يعني هاي كلها
تجارب،
هاي يعني قضايا حقيقية اللي شلون بدينا بيها وشنو العراقيل اللي كانت بيها وشلون نجحنا بيها وتحلت بالضبط.
So Lawrence, do you want to start us off, or you wanted me to start us off? Or
I think did we finish the last story that you had?
Yeah, we finished this one. We did, but we got plenty more to tell.
Yeah.
So
we have a lot.
Yes.
So I think.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think the first one that we're going to talk about was a 2019 accident. That it was really interesting for a couple reasons, right? And the first reason is he was involved in a prior accident about a month before the accident.
Those are always fun, right?
Right. So, a lot of people are concerned about this, and rightly so, because they're afraid that insurance companies are going to deny their claims. And in this case, that's exactly what happened. So so this client was rear-ended in this accident, but the defendants, the insurance companies, were arguing that this was a minor accident, and that he had been involved in an accident just 1 month ago, and that was the source of his injuries. And actually, they even canceled his policy. The insurance company decided to cancel his policy, and they didn't want to pay anything at all on this one. However, our firm, nevertheless, we saw a little bit of hope here. We didn't think that that was proper, either the cancellation or the attributing his injuries to the prior accident. So we took the case. They fought it for quite some time, but frankly, it did take years. But at the end of the day, we managed to, we argued that his injuries were related to the later accident. And what we did was we got actually affidavits from the doctors. And those doctors said that those injuries were not related to the first accident. They were related to the second accident. And I've got a little more to tell, but I'll let Tamara translate because I'm realizing this is getting a little long.
القصة هاي راح تبدي بأنه الشخص هذا كان عنده حادث بال2019. هذا الحادث الثاني مالته. الحادث الأول صار قبل شهر من الحادث الثاني. فمن قبل
اثنينها ب 2019
اثنيناتها بال 2019 بيناتهم شهر بين الحادث الأول والثاني.
يس.
هو ما اجانا على الحادث الأول، ما كان كلش متضرر، اجى على الحادث الثاني. الانشورنس كنسلت الباليسي مالته، ما قبلت تدفع على اي شيء بالثاني، لانه قالت هذا كل الاشياء اللي عنده هذا مال الحادث الاول، ورفضت بانه تدفع اي شيء على هاي القضيه. اجى عندنا شفنا الاوراق، قلنا هاي الشيء مو صحيح. اخذنا الاوراق، طولت القضيه لانه لازم نسوي افادات مال الاطباء ومال كلهم. اخذنا افادات الاطباء كلها، وبالاخير بانه دفعوا على مود الحادث الثاني، واثبتوا الاطباء بانه هاي الاضرار مالته كانت من الحادث الثاني، ومشينا بالقضيه. بس هاي واحده من الاشياء اللي هوايه من الناس يقولون يعني قالوا ما يصير، ويوقفون ويقعدون بعد كل شيء ما يسوون.
يقول لك ما تصير.
دائما تعال استفسر ويا محامي والجواب يجيك.
طبعا هو هوايه محامين صح، لكن كل مكتب له طريقته وحسب ما اعرف انا وحسب ما على التجارب او حتى على الكلام انه تقريبا 2000 قضيه في مكتبكم، في مكتب المحامي لورنس أكثر من 2000 قضية، وأكثرها حوالي 98% منها وأكثر أنه نجحت.
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, so basically, and what the doctor indicated was that this person had received multiple herniated discs, and they got injections, and ultimately even a lumbar fusion surgery, right? And so again, remember when the insurance company is
major back surgery,
right, which is a major back surgery where they fuse the discs together in your back. Okay, it's I've heard it's not a fun procedure. Fortunately, I haven't had to try it myself, knock on wood. But yeah. So anyway, and of course, the client also had the resulting scars from the surgery, right? So this is kind of a big deal in the sense that if it's not related to this accident that we're arguing about, right? Then in theory, the insurance company doesn't have to pay anything. And if it is, there's potentially a lot. Well, the good news is we were, because of getting the affidavit and the medical records and all that and connecting it to the accident, we actually managed to get a very good result in this case. It was settled for hundreds of thousands for both parts of the case, both the personal injury protection, that is the medical, and again, hundreds of thousands on top of that for the pain and suffering as well.
We are still in the first one.
Yes. So اللي صار أخذنا همنا إفادات خطية من الأطباء. من وراء الحادث الثاني كان لازم يسوي عملية للفقرات مالته مال الظهر. صار عنده سكارز لأنه العملية هاي اللي سواها جدا مؤذية. وإذا ما تربح لازم كلها تروح على يكون هو بعاتقه لازم يدفعها. بالضبط. نجحنا بها للقضية الأولى اللي هي مال الطبابة فوق يعني التسوية كانت جدا كبيرة فوق 100,000 والعطل ضرر كذلك.
I actually have a couple stories about how we took a case that was not very valuable at the time and made some value out of it. So I think this is a good story for the listeners.
القصة الثانية راح نبدي بيها. أخذنا القضية جدا كانت ركيكة مو قوية وشلون حولناها إلى قضية قوية. بالضبط.
Yeah, because not every case that comes in the office is immediately valuable, right? Yeah. People don't always come in already having had the surgeries done and all the treatment done and everything else.
بالضبط. مو كل القضايا من تجينا خاصة مثلا صار لهم يومين ثلاثة مسوين حادث ناخذها القضية بس أنت ما تعرف شنو الأضرار بعدها. يعني تكون القضية بعدها صفر أصلا. صفر. كل شيء ما بيها. فبعدين يبين الأشياء يعني الأضرار إذا قوية لو لا.
Yeah, so one of the more extreme cases that I've had regarding this is case that we had. It was a 2019 accident. Excuse me. And the client was with another law firm at the time, and that firm kept her case for over 2 years. And at the end of the 2-year mark, they told her that her case was not worth anything and that she wasn't going to be getting anything out of the settlement. After 2 years. Obviously, that's not what the client wanted to hear after being injured and treating for the accident.
And then waiting for 2 years, right?
And waiting for 2 years. So client, they wanted a second opinion, so they called us. And we took the case. I'll let Tora translate. I know it's
no, it's okay.
No, it's still.
I still have time. Okay. القضية الثانية هاي زبونة صار عندها حادث بال 2019. نعم. كانت عندها محامي لمدة 2 سنين. ورا السنتين المحامي قال لها أنا آسف قضيتك ما تسوى كل شيء وراح أسد القضية. طبعا كل واحد ينزعج خاصة ورا 2 سنين فرادت تاخذ يعني second opinion chance ثاني. اتصلت عندنا بالأوفيس مالتنا and we spoke with her.
So we spoke to her and we didn't agree with the other lawyer's opinion that the case had no value. So we took the case, and I would say less than a year later. So obviously it would have been different if we started with the case, but we had to get acquainted with it and get up to speed on the litigation and stuff like that. So it did take us a little bit more time than normal. But less than a year later, we ended up getting about $75,000 for this client that a prior lawyer said
she wasn't going to get anything.
You mean from 0 to 75,000?
Right.
So جت يمنا طلعنا على الأوراق مالتها. يعني اقتراحنا ما كان ويا اقتراح المحامي مالتها بأنه ماكو أي شيء يطلع من هاي القضية. أخذنا القضية أقل من سنة لأنه تدري كل شيء لازم يتحول من محامي إلى محامي يطول هاي الأشياء. وهو قال ماكو قضية راح يسدها وإحنا حصلنا لها 75,000.
And I think both of these stories, Lawrence, are probably good examples of where the firm, a law firm can really make a big difference in the value of a case, right? I mean, in both of these cases, the insurance companies were saying, look, this isn't worth anything, right? There's no value here. We've got defenses, we think it's pre-existing conditions. We think, I think in the second case, it was arthritis, right? And it was, in the first case, they said, well, there was this accident that had just happened, and in both those cases, insurance companies said, no, we don't need to pay anything. And yet in both of those cases, they did. Then
the next story is kind of more about our workup plus the treatment that happened after the accident kind of worked hand in hand.
Oh, we have a caller.
We have caller.
Great.
الو مرحبا.
مرحبا.
اهلا وسهلا.
بس عندي سؤال للمحامي.
اي تفضلي.
بس يقولوا لي يسوون وصية يعني.
Okay. She wants.
What's that?
Will.
Yeah.
Will, sure. So yeah, if you can call our office, maybe we can get you hooked up with somebody to assist you. You know, we do primarily personal injury and motor vehicle accidents, but we're happy to get you in contact with someone who can assist you.
Yeah.
اي عزيزتي تقدرين تتصلين بينا للمكتب ورقم عندك ورقة وقلم؟
ايه بس شنو يعني الاجراءات شنو نجيب ويانا اذا احد يسويها؟
اللي هو المحامي من تتصلين بالمكتب المحامي هو يقول لك شنو الاشياء اللي لازم تسويها على مود الوصيه.
ايش قد رقم؟
248
نعم
702
702
6641.
شكرا.
اهلا وسهلا.
شكرا.
And thank you for the call. We appreciate it.
Yeah. شكرا.
Yeah, if anyone has any, if anyone wants to call and tell us about their story about what happened
in
their accident case or
anything,
any case that you've ever had, I'm more than happy to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely.
586-825-205-5.
Yes.
So back to the next story. So we had a client, John, if you remember, you did the intake on. You know, when the client originally came in, he had it was about 3 months after the accident, and at that time he had done some physical therapy. The accident was pretty bad. He was injured, you know, and he had a lot of disabilities from it. But at that time, you know, we thought his case may have been worth anywhere between 30 and 50,000. And I would say probably about 6-7 months later, you know, his injuries were not getting better, and he needed a back surgery done. So after that, you know, we had ended up filing the case, and like John, you were saying, we got some affidavits from the doctors and worked with them, and you know, got everything in order. And we ended up getting a really good settlement out of it. So,
well, in this case, it wasn't a settlement, was it? Wasn't it an arbitration?
Yeah. I mean, I was just kind of referring to it as a settlement, just for the purposes of listeners. But yeah, it was actually an arbitration that happened,
which is an interesting concept. I think we could talk about it a little bit because you know, an arbitration is a little different. That's where you know we weren't able to reach a settlement with the insurance company, and we had to put it into a panel. Right, where there's a panel now that's actually deciding how much that case is worth. It's almost like a trial in a sense.
In your office?
No. This is an arbitration, meaning it's essentially it's imagine a trial but without a jury, and instead of it's in front of a panel of experts, okay, of expert attorneys who dealt with these types of cases before. We managed. Go ahead, you were here.
And you know, we went, like you said, we went to arbitration, so it was not a settlement. So after Tamara explains what arbitration is, though, for the listeners, we'll get a better idea.
There we go.
What it is. Yes. But we ended up getting a really good award. It was a little under 400,000, and
it's fantastic.
You know, I thought it was a good workup, and you know, the facts of the case obviously helped us out with that too.
Yeah, fantastic.
هاي الحادثة كان الشخص اجى ورا 3 أشهر من الحادث مالته. يعني أضرار، عنده أوجاع، رايح للثيرابي، عنده disability من الأطباء. بالنا كان من 30 إلى 50 تسوى قضيته. ورا 6-7 أشهر أموره لحد الآن ما صارت زينة صحية. دزينا يعني راح إلى أخصائيين. بالأخير سوى عملية ظهره. الانشورنس ما قبل يدفع وما قبل يسوي ويانا تسوية. اكو مرحلة قبل ما تصعد إلى المحكمة العليا يسموها arbitration. الاربتريشن هي مثل المحكمة العليا بس بدون المحلفين بالضبط، وتقعد فد محامين غير المحامين مالتنا ومالتهم. ما حد يعرفهم، يعني مو من الطرفين، محايدين يكونون. وهم حطوا رقم على القضية ووصلنا إلى تقريبا $400,000.
أنتوا توقعتوها 30-50؟
نعم. هاي
There's
بالبداية.
a big difference in time from when the initial client came in and that arbitration was probably a 2-year difference between those two times.
أول ما إجا
كمصاريف صارت هواية.
مو بس مصاريف بس همين العلاج مالته همين تغير.
The treatment was more aggressive.
التريتمنت يعني العلاج مالته تغير لأنه ما كان يصير زين وسووا بعد تحاليل وبين أكثر أشياء
يعني أكثر
أضرار وبالضبط. وهاي من إجا على ما سوينا التسوية فوق السنتين فهواية تتغير أشياء.
فمن المهم أنه القضية at the end من 30 أو 50 إلى 450
بالضبط.
هذا شيء
جدا كبير. وهذا كله يعتمد بأنه إيد بإيد المصاب والمحامي. بالضبط.
You know, interestingly, this is total tangent, not really related to the cases themselves, but you know Judge Judy, you ever seen that show?
Yeah, I used to watch this show all the time when I was a
Right.
kid.
Isn't that still going after like 30 years or something?
I haven't watched much TV or anything.
I haven't seen it in a long time, but in
10 years or so.
Yeah, but you know those are actually arbitrations.
طبعا
Isn't that interesting?
اليوم أو الأسبوع الماضي نتحدث عن قصص. فهذه نوع مشوق يعني يخلي انه حتى الناس تعرف انه المحامي شو يسوي او شلون يتصرف. يعني صح الكلاينت يعرف لما هو وياهم، لكن لو الغير اللي ما عندهم قضايا راح يصير عندهم قضايا مثلا حتى يعرفون انه كيف تمشي القضايا.
بالضبط. القضية الأخيرة خاصة هسه حكينا بيها.
نعم.
هاي قضية تبين كل فشي جدا واضح بأنه الزبون كان يسمع شو نقول له وهو مثابر بأنه يروح للطبيب لأنه هو فعلا متضرر. وإحنا ثابرنا بأنه إيد بإيد وياه بالضبط ونحكي وياه وعلى اتصال وين وصلت وين صرت. هاي هيك القضايا من تصير تبدي من الصفر وتكبر إلى الآلاف.
الشيء اللي وصلت.
نعم.
حلو.
I just
said explaining.
I said this is a very good example that the client worked hand by hand with us, took our advice, plus he went also to his doctors and therapy and
also took their advice too.
Exactly. So we worked together, and this is when a case from 30 to 50 to 400
10 times.
Yes.
Yeah. Sarah, the next story I have is kind of a sad reality of how insurance companies work. And you know, it just kind of
the insurance companies, they are your buddy.
Well, you know, they're made up of people, and we get along with lots of adjusters.
We get along with the people,
and there's defense attorneys who are very nice people. And I got to tell you, I mean, I don't know how many times I have really worked with a defense attorney to get a decent settlement. You know, it's you're not fighting with every single person you're ever coming in contact with. It's just that sometimes we feel that their positions are unreasonable. You know,
and we feel like sometimes their positions have unintended consequences.
Right.
Like I'll go into in this next story that could be very bad for their insureds.
Yeah.
اللي هسه تكلمنا به بأنه القصة هسه اللي راح نحكي بيها بأنه شلون الانشورنس تتعامل. طبعا هو مو صوت الانشورنس نفسه، واحنا هوايه ويا اهل الانشورنس نتعامل هوايه، اكو زينين وهوايه يتعاملون ويانا بطريقه حلوه، بس اكو همينه ما يسوون شغلهم بالطريقه الصحيحه، لو يعاندون على شغله هي مو صحيحه.
And sometimes I don't think the insurance company or the adjuster kind of realizes what happens in certain cases, right? So denial comes in place. What happens after that? So this is a very also an extreme example. Obviously, we're just giving out stories, so everything's going to be kind of sort of extreme, I guess. So in this case, our client was involved in a car accident, and he treated for, I would say, about 5-6 months. Thereafter, the insurance company sent him to a doctor, to an IME doctor, to get evaluated.
Which is an independent medical evaluator, which is a doctor that's hired by the insurance company and paid for by the insurance company to evaluate.
But you know, they I guess claim to be independent.
Yeah, you know.
So the IME doctor saw our client and was his professional opinion that our client was back to how he was before the accident and no longer should be disabled. And at that time, the client was cut off of work benefits. So the adjuster said, up to this date, up to the date of the IME exam, we're no longer going to be paying for your wage loss.
Right. Which again, just as a reminder to the listeners, you're entitled up to 85% of your lost wages as a result of for up to 3 years as a result of an accident. So they'd cut him off before that had occurred.
6 months out at this time.
Right.
هاي القصة طبعا واحدة من القصص الأخرى. هم أنا بحادث سيارة وكان دا يتعالج ورا 5 إلى 6 أشهر. الانشورنس بعثته إلى الطبيب الانشورنس مالتهم، وطبعا اللي هو يشوفه فد ربع ساعة وما إله علاقة به نهائيا، ووقفه قال بأنه هو رجع إلى حالته الطبيعية قبل الحادث. الزبون كان طبعا قبل الحادث كان يشتغل، فكان تجي رواتب من عندها، قطعوا الرواتب عليه. الرواتب هي 85% طبعا من الراتب، وإلى 3 سنين إلى حق يستلم رواتب إلى 3 سنين. فهنا صار عنده مشكلة لأنه ما يقدر يشتغل. الطبيب ده يقول أنت بعدك مريض، بس طبيب الانشورنس يقول أنت رجعت إلى حالتك الطبيعية قبل.
Yeah. So at that time, the client had to make a decision, right? So the insurance company cut off his wage loss. He had no other income at the time. He had a family that had to provide for. So he, and like you said, Tamara, his doctors said that he was not ready to go back to work.
Yep.
He was actually disabled for a month or 2 after that. So, obviously.
So against the advice of his doctor, he's now going back to work, is what you're saying.
So the client decided to go back to work because he needed to make some money to, feed his family. This was a case, I should have mentioned this before, but this was a case regarding a shoulder injury. Right. So in the accident, this client injured his shoulder. So he goes back to work. It's a physical job. And soon thereafter, he re-injures that same shoulder that was injured in the accident. So it never healed properly, and he re-injures it at work. And a month or 2 later, had to get a surgery done on his shoulder because
he had to go back to work.
Because of the re-injury, because of the original injury. I'm not a doctor, but I'm just telling the story.
Right.
ورا ما قطعوه للشخص من الرواتب، طبعا عنده عائلة، اضطر يرجع للشغل وهو بعده ما صاير زين، بعده متأذي، والانشورنس قال هو زين. الضرر كان عنده الكتف مالته متضرر، رجع دا يشتغل ورا 2 شهر نفس الكتف صار أسوأ، وانتهى بعملية للكتف. واحنا دا نمشي بعدنا بالقضية طبعا.
Yeah, I mean it's just a sad story about how an insurance company denial can affect your health, your life and your health and all
هاي
that stuff.
واحدة من القصص بأنه تبين بأنه الانشورنس بأنه قطعت مالته الفوائد اللي هو إلى حق بها، اللي هي المساعدة البيتية، الرواتب كلها، وخلته يضطر يرجع لأنه عنده عائلة يعيلها، شلون يعيش وتضرر من وراها. فهاي واحدة من الأشياء اللي همنا تصير بالقضايا مع الأسف. بالضبط.
But the good news on a story like that, right, is if we are able to get an affidavit from a doctor and say, hey, this re-injuring of the shoulder is related to the accident, then that's still something we can potentially claim, especially in a bodily injury.
Oh no, I'm not saying that it's not going to be claimed.
Sure.
It just sucks that a client had re-injured his shoulder.
Of course.
Had to get a surgery done because of that.
Exactly.
وبهيجي حالة بأنه احنا رأسا نتصل جراح وناخذ إفادة خطية من عنده بأنه هو فعلا كان متضرر من قبل من وراء الحادث، ومرت له تضرر أكثر من لأنه رجع من الشغل، لأنه الانشورنس قالت هو رجع إلى حالته الطبيعية. فهاي الأشياء كلها ترجع تصير مرة هاي كلها تزيد للقضية مالته.
صحيح.
وطبعا هو تضرر وتأذى، واحنا دائما نقول المصاريف ما تشتري الصحة، بس بهاي الحالة
تشتري.
يعني فعلا هو يستحقها وأكثر.
صحيح.
I think it was one of those situations where the insurance company thought they were going to save some money, but ended up being more liability.
بهيجي حالة الانشورنس كان يتوقع خلص راح يوقف قضية، ما راح أصرف هواية. بهيجي حالة دفعوا أكثر أضعاف لأنه هم كان مالتهم التقرير مو صحيح.
You know, there are a lot of those situations actually that we come across, right? Where the insurance companies think they're going to save, you know, $1,000 or a couple $1,000.
Yeah.
And then it ends up costing them a whole heck of a lot more. You know, one thing that comes to mind.
Well, in those situations, most of the time, I think they're banking on the fact that they won't pursue a case with a lawyer.
Right. Well, but I mean, even in cases where, you know, like I was thinking about home modifications, right? Sometimes people have to get home modifications. And it was many years ago, actually. I think before I met you. But I had a case one time where there was a client who, I mean, it was just the silliest thing. Just needed a ramp, you know, to get up and down into his house, basically.
Right.
And he needed some kind of you know, lift, I think, to get up to the upstairs bedroom, and the insurance company had refused to provide him the lift to get in the upstairs, and instead they ended up having to pay for remodeling of like the entire house, including the downstairs, to create a downstairs bedroom. And if they just paid for the ramp, it would have saved them a lot of money, but they had refused that in the beginning. So, you know, these decisions are sometimes driven by individuals, right, who aren't seeing maybe the bigger picture.
طبعا اي واحد عنده سؤال استفسار يقدر يتصل بينا، باقي لنا تقريبا ربع ساعه. اي واحد عنده اي سؤال 586-825-2015. يس.
واحدة من الأشياء اللي تصير همينة مرات الشخص اللي متضرر يكون مقعد، لو محتاج عربانة يقعد بيها يمشي. بيوتنا هنا أكثريتها مو يعني مؤهلة لهالشيء، يحتاج له مثلا مصعد، لو يحتاج لغرفة نومه فوق، يحتاج له مصعد للدرج. لو مثلا فشي بسيط الحمام مالته هو البانيو احنا نسميه، ما يقدر يدخل بيه، يحتاج له مثلا بس فشي حتى توقف شاور بالضبط. الانشورنس ما تقبل، تبدي تعاند، خلينا نقول تماطل. صرفت آلاف حتى تبني غرفة نوم إلى جوا وحمام إلى جوا وكله إلى جوا حتى لا تسوي مصعد للدرج.
وكان يمكن أقل تكاليف.
بالضبط. فهاي واحدة من الأشياء اللي همينا إحنا هاي يعني مو هم نشتغل بيها وتصير صعبة، لأنه الزبون ما يعرف شو يسوي، هو مقعد وعلينا احنا لازم يعني نحكي وياهم وندفع ونتابع وكله بالضبط. Yes.
So I think that the next one is an interesting one. That's a story actually about a non-native English speaker.
Oh, that's
right.
That's the main thing.
See, and this happens. I mean, honestly, Lawrence, how many times do we have people that don't speak English very well, or just, you know, they aren't native English speakers, and there's some kind of miscommunication with the police? How many times do we see that?
I mean, we see that a lot.
Every day.
I mean, we're you know, a bulk of our office is set up to handle Arabic, Chaldean speaking clients. So we see it. We see it a lot. We see it a lot.
Yeah. طبعا هاي القصة الأخرى قصة عن شخص ما يتكلم اللغة الإنجليزية بجيدة، وهو ما أعرف هو هل هو عربي أو لا، ما أدري، بس إحنا الشيء الرئيسي بأنه إحنا نخدم الجالية العربية الكلدانية الأكثر، لأن نتكلم اللغة العربية والكلدانية بالمكتب.
صح.
Yeah. So what happened in this one was really very interesting. So the police came to the scene of the accident. The accident was the police were called, and they came to the scene, and what turned into eventually becoming the defendant, that is the party that our client wanted to sue. He had said to the police that our client had pulled in front of him from a left lane, turning right into a parking lot. Okay. Now, it's important to understand that our client did not speak basically any English at the time, and as a result, he was unable to communicate his side of the story.
القصة بدأت بأنه صار الحادث، صاحوا الشرطة جوي، زبوننا ما كان غلطان، بس ما يعرف يحكي إنجليزي نهائيا. الطرف الآخر ما حكى الصراحة، قال أنا اجيت من صفحة اليسار، هو على أساس زبوننا اجى من صفحة اليسار ولاف قدامه وطب للباركينج. زين، الزبون مالتنا ما عرف شلون يقول له للشرطي لو يعبر عن قصته بأنه هو هذا اللي يحكيه غلط، والقصة ويقول له القصة الحقيقية.
Yeah. So what did the police do, right? If they're presented with one story and only one story, they're going to adopt that story and put it in the police report because they weren't there, which I completely understand. It happens.
They are right. They have the right.
Well, I mean, they can only report what's been reported to them.
I mean, like, and for their standpoint, what are they supposed to do? You know, they don't speak Arabic.
Right.
You know, that's why we always tell clients to come into an office. We could try to get the police report corrected.
Right.
You know, if it's not too
Right.
late.
Right.
Yeah. النقطة بأنه صح الزبون ما يعرف يحكي إنجليزي، لذلك إحنا نطلب من الزبائن من يصير حادث والشرطي السمعة، هذا اللي يقدر يكتبه بالتقرير، ما يقدر يكتب أي شيء آخر. صحيح. اللي ما يسمعه واللي ما يعرفه، لأنه الشرطي ما يعرف عربي، هذا الشيء الوحيد اللي يقدر يسويه. بس إحنا نطلب من الزبائن إذا أكو هيك شيء وأنت تعرف أكو فد حاجز مال اللغة بينك وبين الشرطة، وأكو عندك فد احتمال بأنه أكو الحكي ما انحكى صحيح، رأسا تشوف محامي، لأنه كل ما الفترة أقصر كل ما تقدر تروح تغير التقرير. الريبورت بالضبط.
So now, why is this important? You have to remember that there are two different types of cases, right? There's the personal injury protection that we've talked about many times, and then there's the bodily injury. You're not entitled to a bodily injury case at all, okay? Zero if you are more than 50% at fault, okay? And so essentially what the police report is saying is our client is 100% at fault. That's what the police report is saying.
الشيء المهم، إذا أنت ما غلطان عندك قضيتين، قضية مال الطبابة وقضية مال العطل وضرر. المصاريف اللي تجي للشخص هي من العطل وضرر. إذا أنت تكون غلطان معناته ما عندك أنت عطل وضرر. بهاي القضية كان الزبون مالتنا على أساس هو الغلطان 100%، لأنه ما عرف ينطي القصة مالته
حسب التقرير مال
الشرطة بالضبط.
Yeah. And you know why the reason why that's important, obviously, John, we've talked about this before, but police reports are not used at trial. But it is
but the testimony of the
officer is it's important for that purpose, and also it's important for pre-suit settlements, and also settlements while it's in litigation. The adjusters look at the police reports when they determine liability.
Right.
So it is not a good thing to have, you know, you at fault on the police report when you weren't at fault.
Right.
من تصعد القضية للمحكمة العليا، تقرير الشرطة ما يستخدم كإثبات، لأنه مو دائما صحيح. بس شنو اللي يستخدم كإثبات؟ يصيحون الشرطي اللي هو كتب التقرير.
And he's not going to remember what happened that day. So he's going to look at the police report and he's going to say, okay, this is what happened.
1 2 3.
Yeah.
وهذا من يسوون من يصير هذا الشيء، هاي ورفت سنتين وشوية. يوميا عنده هو حادث، شو راح يذكره؟ هو هم راح يباوع على التقرير، يقرأ يقول له إيه هو هذا الصار. فكلش مهم بأنه يتغير تقرير الشرطة من البداية.
Yeah. Now, I've told you already what the other driver said, but what did our guy say, right? Our guy said, well, no, hold on, that's not what happened. I was rear-ended. I was already in the lane. Okay. When this guy came up from behind me, I was turning into a parking lot, into a plaza. I slowed down to make the turn. He didn't slow down enough and whacked the back of my vehicle, right? So those are two very different stories.
And we looked at the pictures of the accident, and his story made sense.
Right. The pictures were consistent with his story. Right.
الزبون مالتنا قال اوقفوا هذا الحكي غلط. اني دا اروح دا اطب للبلازا صح للباركينج لات، بس هو اجى ضربني من ورا.
صح.
صور عنده
إيه.
اثبت بانه لو هو ذاك لو طالع قدامه وهو ضاربه كان السياره الاخرى من صفحه واحده بس تنضرب، هو سيارته مضروبه كلها من قدام وهذا من ورا. فالصور ثبتت بانه حكي زبوننا هو كان الصحيح.
Just wanted to say really quick. So even if just for the listeners to be careful. So even if a person did not get a ticket after the accident, doesn't mean that they weren't at fault in the police report.
Right.
So
tickets don't actually really make a whole lot of difference in terms of determination of liability.
Right. So if you don't have the police report, you don't know what it says. Call us, come to us. We'll be able to pull it for you, and we'll be able to kind of discuss it with you and make sure it's accurate.
Yeah. مو معناته إذا أنت صرت بحادث وما اطلع لك تيكت، ما أخذ لك تيكت، معناته أنت مو غلطان. مرات يكون أنت غلطان بس هو يعتقد الشرطي أنت ما تحتاج تأخذ تيكت. فلذلك أهم شيء تشوف تقرير الشرطة، كلش مهم بالبداية للقضية. ليش؟ لأنه إذا أكو غلط نقدر نصلحها، وهمنا يبين بأنه أنت عندك عطل ضرر. هاي أهم شيء.
No.
Yeah. So and again, you have to remember now that so now when we've got the two stories out, right? Now there's a question. It's called a question of fact, right? That can go in front of a jury. But one person saying one person saying one thing and another person saying another thing. So now there's a dispute. But now how do we get from there to closing out the case favorably? Well, yet again, just like we talked about a little bit last week, the depositions helped out a little bit here, because when we took the deposition, there was an interesting fact that was pulled out of the other driver, and that is that when they impacted, the accident essentially ended up partially in that driveway where our client had said he was slowing down to turn right into, which essentially supported our client's testimony more than the other drivers, because if the other driver had seen our driver pulling out in front of him, it's unlikely his car would have ended up in the driveway. So in any event, we were able to get some testimony that supported our proposition, and that did result in a favorable outcome.
So without taking that deposition, you would not have known
right exactly
what happened, right? Which is not what every firm does.
Yeah.
So
well,
I think it worked out in our favor.
That's right.
So بالإفادة فادتنا جدا الإفادة. الصور بينت بأنه الزبون مالتنا كان ديلوف للبلازا ديطب للباركينج على كيفه وانضرب من ورا، فجزء من السيارة كانت اوريدي شوية طابة بالبلازا، بينما لو هو جاي وعابره وهو ذاك ضاربه يكون السيارة ما طابة بعدها بالبلازا، بعدها ما he will not make it، يعني هو ما راح يلحق يطب للبلازا لأن هو already انضرب. فهاي واحدة من الأشياء اللي فادته بالضبط، وطلع هو مو غلطان والشخص الآخر غلطان.
Yeah. Now we didn't get a ton of money on the bodily injury portion of this case. I think we ended up getting around $30,000, but essentially was a claim that kind of came from nothing, right?
Right. I mean, if you're considered at fault, you get zero.
Right.
So you start from a place of zero, and this is an improvement.
So I think that that was a pretty good settlement based on what happened.
I don't remember how long this one took.
This one was a 2021 accident, and I think it was resolved sometime last year. So it took probably about 2.5 years. Yeah. These cases take long. I mean, unfortunately, that's
the majority of cases.
If anyone's ever been through a litigation, a civil litigation, or an immigration, or a criminal, these criminal may be a little different, but these cases just take very long. The court processes. I don't want to process. Yeah.
So and just
a lengthy process, and the courts deal with a lot of cases. So
and just to add on to that, I mean, it's not really up to the law firms to decide exactly how long these cases are going to take, because a court, specifically a judge, will set a scheduling order in each case once it's filed, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like the attorney is determining, hey, we're going to do this now and we're going to do this later. A court actually issues a scheduling order saying that discovery is due at this, you have to do discovery by this date, and you're going to have a settlement conference on this date, and other things that are set set forth in that scheduling order.
So هاي القضية صح مو هواية طلع من عندها، لأن كان يعني المفروض هو ما يحصل كل شيء، لأن هو كان الغلطان.
صحيح.
فمن صفر حصل 30,000. اوف كورس كان
هو
عنده
ما متأذي.
كان عنده هواية أشياء قبل الحادث اللي هي كان رايح لها قبل الحادث للطبيب على مود هالشيء. سو ما ساعدت كلش. هاي وحدة. اثنين، لو مو الصور والإفادة ما كان ربحناها. أنت سألت إيش قد طولت. عادة المعدل مال أي قضية يطول بين السنتين وسنتين ونص. هاي المعدل، وهاي مو بيد المكتب. هاي بيد الحاكم. من نرفع القضية ورا سنة بالضبط، ورا سنة بيوم الحادث نرفع احنا القضية حتى نأكد بأنه كل البلات وكل شيء خلال السنة تكون مغطاية. اوكي، سو من ننطي الأوراق نرفعها بالمحكمة، بذاك النهار الحاكم يسموها يطلع الجدول مال هاي القضية، وهو يقول ورا، طبعا هاي ورا من ندفعها ورا شهر، ورا 28 يوم او اكثر، يلا يجينا بانه احنا استلمنا القضيه. هاي هذا شهر هيك
هذا شهر راح.
ورا الشهر عندك يسموا مرحله استكشاف، عندك مرحله مال الافاده، ومرحله الاستكشاف اولا، بعدين افاده، بعدين عندك يحطون رقم على القضيه اذا يقبلوها نعم او لا، واذا لا تروح إلى مرحلة أخرى وإلى مرحلة أخرى، وقبل ما تصعد يعني لذلك يعني هي طول بالضبط. وهاي كله بأنه مو إحنا، هذا كله القاضي هو خال هذا الجدول، مو إحنا بالضبط.
So anyway, so it's interesting. It's interesting to see, the results of these cases. There's another case that I was going to talk about. It wasn't a huge case. The client wasn't horribly injured. But she had some claims, and Tamara, you worked with me on this one.
Well, you know what? The one we just spoke about is funny. I don't know, but the story, I know who's the client. It's just so funny.
Make sure you don't say
No,
right.
no, I'm not going to say. But I know exactly, and we met both.
Yes. Oh,
yes.
Yeah, oh, yes. Yeah. Yep. Well, the next one you worked with me on as well, as I recall.
It's funny how these things come around, right?
Yes.
Years later.
Yeah.
After you did the initial intake.
Yeah, and as soon as you spoke in the beginning, and I thought, oh yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
How good do you feel when I come to you and say, hey, you remember this case that you signed up 2 years ago? We ended up getting a good result.
I love it.
It's the best feeling in the world.
Right?
Even our posts on Instagram, and when we settle, and I know which case it is, and I know like you worked on it in the beginning, and it settled this big. Oh, I'm like, it's being proud
for sure.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
فعلا تشتغل على قضية على الانستغرام، يسوون ينزلون بأنه احنا ربحنا القضية، وش قد ربحناها، وأطاوع هاي قضيتي، يعني أنا اشتغلت فيها بالبداية. تكون فخور بأنه لأنه جدا جدا مهمة أول سنة، كلش مهمة. Yes.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so this next one, as I said, I think you worked on it with me.
Yeah.
There were actually two aspects to this one which I thought were interesting to talk about, and that was, this was before we ever filed a lawsuit. Okay, there was a woman who basically was the owner of a beauty academy. Okay, and she was injured in a 2021 motor.
Wait, John, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
Did we ever talk? Did we talk about the story about the client meeting the attorney and paralegal the same day and got really emotional after that?
I don't think we talked about that. Do you want to do that first?
So I think we only have. How much time do we have, Sahar?
We have about
3
less than
3 minutes.
no. Yeah, about 2 minutes.
Okay.
Well, you go ahead then. We can save the next
one. Might take a little bit longer.
Sure.
Maybe we'll save that story for the next time around.
Sure.
But I did want to tell a quick story.
Yes, tell me. Go ahead.
That I personally was very happy about because I'm in charge of kind of setting up the office and structure and stuff like that. So I was pretty happy when I heard this. there was a client that came in about a month ago, and she was with 2 attorneys prior to coming to us. She went to the first attorney, was with him for about 3 months. And she said she never spoke to anyone other than a paralegal who signed her up. And that was really it. For 3 months, she heard from one person, and it was not a lawyer, it was a paralegal, and it was the intake paralegal, so not even a paralegal that's working on cases.
Right.
So then she said, this is not the right firm for me. So she switched firms to another firm. At that time, she went into an office, met with a paralegal, no attorney, and that was it. No communication after that.
Same thing again.
Oh
boy.
So
before you translate, there's a question.
on Facebook.
تسألهم عندهم محامي اختصاص إذا دكتور مسوي غلط بالعملية.
نعم عندنا. Yes. medical malpractice.
Oh, okay.
Yes. إذا دا يسمعنا خلي يتصل للمكتب.
هو اللي يسمع طبعا.
They can call her off.
Yes. يتصل للمكتب 248-702-6641 وإحنا ندز إلى المحامي مال أخطاء طبية.
So, Sarah, the way our office works is when you, I'll continue this story really quick. I'll finish it off.
Yes.
So the way we have it set up is when you come in for an intake, you meet with a intake paralegal and you meet with the intake lawyer that same day.
Yes.
And then within a few days, you then you meet that paralegal that's going to be working on your file, and also the attorney that's going to be working on your file.
Okay, we have to end now.
I'll finish this.
sorry. عندنا قصة جدا مؤثرة. كانت الزبونة كان عندها محامين قبلنا 2. ما حد شافها مرة واحدة بس قاعدة وياها وما كان المحامي كان بس المساعدة. بعدين قالت هاي مو المحامين مالاتي جتي عندنا. احنا عندنا لازم المحامي والمساعدة اثنيناتهم لازم يطبون يجتمعون ويا الزبون الجديد وورا كم يوم همينا مرت الأخ نقعد وياهم ونمشي بالقضية.
Okay.
So the story is not done. I'll finish it next time around.
Okay.
Yeah.
طبعا. Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Thank you, Mr. John.
Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا ست تمارا.
يا أهلا وسهلا.
مستمعينا الأكارم مشاهدينا الأعزاء، طبعا انتهى وقتنا. نشكر المحامين لورنس قاجي وجان شرودر وأيضا الأخت العزيزة تمارا، ونلتقيكم إن شاء الله في الأسبوع القادم وحلقة جديدة إن شاء الله.